Imagine waking up tomorrow, grab your phone, open Etsy, and every single one of your shop is gone. Your accounts are suspended, your payments are on hold, and all your listings have disappeared. Not because you scammed anyone or broke any of Etsy's rule, but because Etsy believe every single one of your store links directly back to one person. Sounds crazy? Well, this happens a lot more often than you would think. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how experienced Etsy sellers manage multiple accounts across different platforms without having to link it all back to themselves. And by the end of the video, I'll also show you a simple tool that you can use that will make the whole process a lot more easier, and also how you can grab a 40% off GoLogin and a 2 gig of free proxy traffic if you do decide to use it yourself. So stick around, let's get to it. But before we talk about the solution, let's talk about the problem. Now, you need to understand exactly what Etsy is looking for. A lot of people think Etsy only check their name and their email address. That's not even close. Every time you log into Etsy, you're leaving behind a digital fingerprint. Now, think of it like walking on a wet concrete. Even if you never tell Etsy who you actually are, those footprints can still lead back to you. So, what does Etsy see? Quite a lot actually. Your IP address, your browser fingerprint, the cookies you leave behind every single time you log in, the device you're using, and also your payment information, and even patterns in how you use the platform. Now here's where people get in trouble. If two different stores start sharing the exact same of those signals we just mentioned, Etsy is going to flag it. And once that happens, a problem with just one account becomes a problem for every other account. That's why simply opening a different browser or using incognito mode doesn't really work. Those tricks only hide a tiny piece of the puzzle. You still actually leave behind quite a lot that is still visible to Etsy. So, what's the solution? This is where anti-detect browser comes in. Anti-detect browser. Sounds scary, but it's actually much easier than you think. The easiest way to think about them is, instead of trying to squeeze every of your Etsy shop into one browser, you actually have to give every single shop its own browser. So that way, each profile has its own identity, its own cookies, its own browser fingerprint, and its own IP address. To Etsy, they look like completely different computers being used by completely different people. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be using GoLogin because I believe it's one of the most easiest anti-detect browser for beginners. Alright, now that you know exactly how Etsy links accounts, let's build a setup to avoid all that from the very beginning. Here is the rule I want you to follow. One Etsy address should have one identity. That means one browser profile, one proxy, one IP address, and ideally its own payment and payout information. Because the more independent each shop is, the less likely Etsy is to connect them back to one person. And the one thing I see a lot of people overlook often is payment information. Because reusing the same bank card or PayPal information across multiple stores can be the strongest signal that that store belongs to one person. Think about it. So if you're really serious about running multiple Etsy businesses long term, keep those financial details completely separate. I know it might seem like extra work today, but it can save you a massive headache later on. Now, speaking of headache, that is exactly what I get when I see a lot of people go to Google to search for free or cheap proxies. You see, for Etsy, not every single IP address looks equally trustworthy. There are two main types you come across: data center proxies and residential proxies. Data center proxies usually come from server. They are fast, they are cheap, but they are also the type that Etsy and many other platforms already recognize as higher risk. Residential proxies, on the other hand, are different. These IP addresses come from real residential internet connection. So to Etsy, they look much more like normal people browsing the internet from their home. And that's exactly what you want. And yes, residential proxies are usually a bit more costly than the other one. But get this, you're not paying for speed, you're paying for credibility. And when your goal is protecting the Etsy business you've spent months growing, that's a trade-off I believe is worth making. Now for the fun part, let's build your first profile with GoLogin. If you haven't already, create a GoLogin account and log in. Now from your dashboard, click the green Add Profile button on the left side of the screen. The first thing you do is to give your profile a name. Keep it simple and descriptive, something like Etsy Shop 1 or Vintage Store. Because if you're planning on managing multiple Etsy shops, giving each profile a clear name will save you a lot of confusion later on. Next, on the proxy section, you'll see multiple options: GoLogin proxy, your proxy, without proxy. This is where you decide how you want your profile to connect to the internet. If you already have a residential proxy from another provider, select your proxy. then paste in the proxy details they gave you. That usually includes your host, port, username and password. Once you've entered everything, click Check Proxy. If everything is correct, GoLogin will confirm that your proxy is working. If it doesn't connect, don't worry. Most of the time, it's caused by a typo, expired credentials, or an inactive proxy. Simply double check your details and try again. Now, if you don't already have your own proxy service, don't worry. GoLogin also provides built-in residential proxies. Simply select GoLogin Proxy. Then choose Proxy per GB. Select your preferred country, choose residential, and click Check Proxy. And that's all there is to it. For beginners, this is often the quickest and easiest way to get started because everything is managed directly inside GoLogin. Now you'll notice several other tabs across the top, including time zone, extensions, bookmarks, geolocation, and advanced. For most users, you won't need to touch any of these. GoLogin automatically configures most of these settings to match your browser profile, creating a more natural browsing environment. So once everything looks good, click Create Profile. Then your new browser profile will appear on your dashboard. Simply click Run to launch it, and then click on View to open it. A brand new browser window opens, and from this point forward, that browser is your Etsy shop. Not your everyday Chrome browser, not another incognito window, a completely separate environment built specially for that one store. That's exactly what makes anti-detect browser so powerful. Now, before you even think about signing into Etsy, let's make sure everything is actually working. Inside the GoLogin browser you just launched, go to IPHey.com. It's completely free, by the way. This is to check whether your browser profile looks trustworthy. After a few seconds, you'll see a report. What you're hoping to see is lots of green check marks. Here's what those green checks are actually telling you. Your IP looks normal, your browser fingerprint is consistent, your time zone matches your location, your language settings make sense, and perhaps most importantly, your IP isn't leaking through something called WebRTC. You don't need to understand the technical side of WebRTC. Just remember this: if IPHey says everything looks good, you are in great shape. If IPHey starts showing warnings, stop right there, don't log into Etsy yet. Fix the problem first, because it's much easier to spend 2 extra minutes correcting your setup than weeks of trying to recover a suspended Etsy account. So at this point, you've done the hardest part. You have a completely isolated browser and you've already verified everything on IPHey before logging in. But that's not everything. There's still a certain part most beginners accidentally mess up, which is actually using the account you just set up. Because believe it or not, even with a perfect setup, the way you behave inside of Etsy still matters. So let's talk about that part. You might think after setting up your account, the next thing to do is to start uploading up to 75 listings on Etsy all at once. Not so fast, just pump your brakes on that. Sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is not actually your setup, it's how you behave on Etsy during the first few days as a new user. Think about this for a second. From Etsy's perspective, a brand new shop appears from nowhere, uploads dozens of listings, starts editing products every few minutes, logs in constantly, and immediately begins acting like a large established business. That doesn't look natural. Whether you're running one store or 10, Etsy pays much closer attention to new users. So instead of rushing everything on day one, take your time, browse through Etsy, update your profile, just learn the ropes, and maybe upload a few listings. Now that you know all that, remember the one rule I gave you earlier? One Etsy shop should have just one GoLogin profile. Don't mix it up, never. So let's move forward. Let's say you move beyond 2 or 3 stores. You run multiple stores, maybe 100 or 20. Does anything change inside GoLogin? Actually, yes. It does. The basic rules stays exactly the same, but organization becomes much more important. And this is where folders inside GoLogin become incredibly useful. It helps you group similar shops together and give every profile a clear name. And with that, you can also label every proxy so you know which one belongs to which Etsy shop. And here's another important tip. Don't log into every single account one after another in a 5-minute sprint. Spread your work out naturally. Maybe update one shop in the morning, one during lunch, one after lunch, and maybe one later on at night. This is not you trying to fool Etsy. This is you trying to create a balanced workflow that looks like independent businesses being managed separately, because that's exactly what they are, so treat them as such. Now, you know how to do this alone, but what if you have a team? Maybe you have a VA or a business partner, or maybe a small team helping you manage multiple Etsy shops. This introduces a completely different challenge. Imagine one employee logs into your shop from New York, and a few minutes later, another teammate logs into the exact same shop from maybe Germany. Then someone else logs in from Canada. From Etsy's perspective, that can look like an account takeover, not teamwork. And the easiest way to go around this is quite simple. Assign one shop to one person whenever possible. But if multiple people genuinely need access to one shop, then you can use GoLogin profile sharing feature, which allows everyone involved to use the exact same browser profile and the exact same browser fingerprint. So instead of everyone bringing their own computer identity to the mix, it keeps everything consistent. And consistency is what platforms like Etsy look for. So at this point, you know how to build a clean setup, you know the mistakes to avoid, and you know how to manage your shops whether you're working alone or whether you have a team. But what happens when something still goes wrong? Well, maybe your proxy suddenly stops working, or maybe Etsy is asking for verification, or maybe after doing all this, two shops still get linked anyways. Let's look at a few situations you might come across. I'm going to name this as different scenarios from 1 to 3. Maybe GoLogin tells you your proxy isn't responding, or IPHey starts showing warnings. Whatever the case it may be. In that case, don't log into Etsy just to see if it still works, because something else might go wrong. You need to fix the connection first. Double check your proxy credentials and make sure your subscription is still active. If everything looks correct but the issue continues, contact your proxy provider before accessing Etsy again. It's a small delay, but it's much safer than creating unnecessary account signals. Maybe Etsy asks you to verify your identity. This usually catches a lot of people off guard, and their first reaction is usually something has gone wrong, but not necessarily. Verification request happens on many platforms. Maybe Etsy just wants to know who you are, and if you've been running your shop properly, just follow the instructions they provide, because trying to work around a legitimate verification request usually creates more problems than it solves. Maybe you accidentally opened the wrong profile. We've all been there before. If you realize you've launched the wrong profile, don't continue working. Just close it immediately. Then reopen the correct browser profile and then log into your Etsy account. So we've learned today that running multiple shops on Etsy doesn't have to be stressful. Once your system is organized, it becomes surprisingly easy. Your biggest threat or challenge isn't actually Etsy itself. It's trying to manage multiple stores without a consistent workflow. And that's exactly why tools like GoLogin exist. So instead of constantly worrying whether your accounts are sharing the same browser fingerprint or data, you can focus on what actually matters, which is actually growing your business, serving your customers, making sales, and creating your products. So if you're planning on managing multiple Etsy shop, or you simply just want a cleaner and more organized workflow, I've left everything you need in the description below. You'll find my 40% discount code for GoLogin, along with a special bonus that gives you 2 GB of free proxy traffic to help you get started easily. So if this video helped you understand exactly how Etsy connects accounts, just give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Thank you.